News 10 NBC is taking you inside the evidence. We're going where you can't. Inside police investigations of unsolved murders.
Tonight's case, a double murder in Irondequoit from nearly 40 years ago. Nikki Rudd joins us with a story that you'll see only on News 10 NBC.
Overkill. That's how investigators describe this double murder in 1980. A couple brutally killed in their home. Tonight, for the first time, you'll see exclusive crime scene pictures from inside the house.
Beaten, stabbed, and shot.
When you see it, you don't forget about it.
28-year-old Bonnie Makovich and her 42-year-old boyfriend Tom Tabor were found dead in their home on Shelford Road in Irondequoit on May 4th, 1980.
The gun had been used as well as a knife, and that no weapon was ever found.
Irondequoit Police Captain Mark Bean says this was no random act. The victims were both beaten, possibly with a fireplace poker. Tom was shot once in the chest and 3 times in the back. Bonnie was shot execution style in the back of the head. A butcher knife was also buried in her chest post-mortem.
What did that say to you?
Well, the first thing that I thought was a crime of passion.
Retired State Supreme Court Appellate Judge Joe Valentino was a prosecutor for the Monroe County District Attorney's Office at the time. He responded to the scene. He spoke with News 10 NBC about the crime he can't forget.
Had you ever seen anything like that before?
No, I never saw anything like that. 2 people were laying side by side in the living room near the fireplace. They were laying perfectly next to each other, laying down, looking up, laying next to each other, like they had been placed in that position.
News 10 NBC obtained these never-before-seen crime pictures. Valentino remembers bullet holes in the wall leading to the upstairs of the home. A TV still on in the bedroom. In the kitchen, a bottle of wine and glasses. Police also found a telephone in a pillowcase.
We do believe that one of the victims may have had that to try to protect themselves, but didn't have a chance to use it.
Bonnie and Tom were successful salespeople for a ski wear company. They were both divorced and had been living with each other for a couple years. Police say the ex-husband and ex-wife had alibis and were not considered suspects.
There have been no answers, to such a brutal, unnecessary case.
There were no signs of forced entry and nothing was taken, leading investigators to believe they knew the killer.
Who do you think did this?
Someone that knew him, or someone that had a grudge against them.
A lot of evidence was collected in this case. Right now, investigators are working with the Monroe County Crime Lab to run some new tests. If you have any information on this double murder, you're asked to call Irondequoit Police. And to see some stories we aired back in 1980 on this case, go to our website, WHEC.com, and click on Web Extra. Nikki Rudd, News 10 NBC.
News 10 NBC is taking you inside the evidence. We're going where you can't, inside police investigations of unsolved murders.
Tonight, a new lead in the case of baby Wayne. He was an infant found dead on the side of the road in Wayne County back in 1987. News 10 NBC's Nikki Rudd joins us with the exclusive details.
State police are asking for your help tonight. Investigators just got a tip that a brown Ford Maverick was involved in the case of baby Wayne. The 1- to 2-day-old boy left for dead in Marion 31 years ago.
Who's baby Wayne?
Baby Wayne is an unnamed baby that was found on the side of the road.
It was February 27th, 1987.
A brand new baby. Got no chance at life.
Baby Wayne was found on this stretch of Marion Walworth Road in Marion.
As I'm going up a hill, I noticed this bundle of one side of the road, and saw something sticking out.
Back in 1987, News 10 NBC spoke with the truck driver from Palmyra who found baby Wayne.
And when I stopped my truck and got out and approached this bundle, I thought when I first saw it was a play doll.
But it wasn't a doll at all. In this crime scene picture, you can see the baby's body near the guardrail. He was white, 6 pounds, had brown eyes and a full head of brown hair. To this day, state police don't know who the mother is or if she was involved.
The child did not have any diapers, didn't have a t-shirt, no children's clothing at all. It was wrapped in this brown and white sweater. We feel it's the only thing the mother had available.
That was then state police investigator William Bowling. He has since retired.
Maybe today I'll get that clue that'll put an end to this case.
Now, investigator Bob Klinkman is working the case. For the first time, he told us about key evidence from that sweater.
There were hairs on it, and we thought maybe that would be used for DNA purposes. They were actually dog hairs, reddish brown, about 2 to 3 inches long, all through this sweater.
That leads investigators to believe whoever left baby Wayne on the side of the road had a dog. And the other new tip?
I got this information allegedly that the brown Maverick was somehow involved.
Here's what that car could have looked like. A brown Maverick produced by Ford in the 1970s.
We'd like to fill in the blanks that we have on this case.
Baby Wayne would be 31 years old today.
It's just mind-boggling.
State police believe baby Wayne was alive when he was abandoned, but died in the cold.
It hurts you a little bit to know that this child was left, to basically freeze to death. The cause of death was a combination of a fractured skull and hypothermia.
Investigators aren't sure how or when the skull was fractured, causing a brain hemorrhage. But they don't believe baby Wayne was born in a hospital. The umbilical cord was not cut properly.
Everything leads us to believe the mother panicked when the child was born. We're quite certain she's probably would like to come forward.
31 years later, she has not. Over the years, hundreds of leads have come in. DNA samples have been taken, but all of them came back negative. No relation to baby Wayne.
And I think everyone around here, everyone knows baby Wayne.
Everybody. Everybody knows. All you have to say is baby Wayne.
Right now, state police are working to see if they can get any matches to baby Wayne's DNA through sites like Ancestry. And by next year, they hope to use new DNA technology that could provide a sketch of what the mother would look like. If you have any information on this case, you're asked to call state police at 585-398-4225. Nikki Rudd, News 10 NBC.
News 10 NBC is taking you inside the evidence of Monroe County's oldest cold case. We're going where you can't. Inside police investigations of unsolved murders.
Tonight, the case of 2 teens murdered in Pittsford 55 years ago. Nikki Rudd has exclusive pictures from the crime scene never seen before and file footage not seen in decades.
It was the summer of 1963. The victims, 2 teens out on a date, shot and killed. More than half a century later, the killer has never been caught.
Cherie Smoyer was 18 years old, a student at Ithaca College. Jack King was 17. He had just graduated from Avon High School. In July of 1963, they were out on a date.
Mutiny of the Bounty was the movie. It was a Marlon Brando movie. It's about 3 hours long.
Monroe County Sheriff's investigator Mike Shannon says the teens were seen leaving the old Starlight Drive-In movie theater in Henrietta before 2 a.m. Hours later, their bodies were found in the parking area of an old lover's lane.
Through here is Irondequoit Creek. There's also a swimming hole. It was called Jesky's Swimming Hole, and that's the location of our crime.
Investigator Shannon took us to the scene of the double murder off Jefferson Road, about a mile and a half from Smoyer's house. This is the path the teens drove down to their deaths.
They were both shot, and Cherie Smoyer was also bludgeoned in the head.
And what's crazy about this, there's no motive.
Not that we know of.
Later that morning, their bodies were found by a fisherman lying next to the King family's 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air.
This morning, he was taking pictures of the car in which Sherry and John had been riding before they were murdered. Today, in this area right...
News 10 NBC's Warren Doremus was there as deputies examined the car back in 1963.
This is a bare metal here. We believe that the car might have grazed along the side and then into it, forcing the car over.
Were Cherie and John run off the road, then forced down that old lover's lane and murdered? Then Sheriff Albert Skinner said someone saw the car on Route 96 around 2:30 in the morning.
We couldn't identify him, but we saw that there were 3 people there.
There were 3 people?
Mm-hmm.
The boy, the girl, and who else?
There were two men and a girl, a woman.
So who was the other man?
Is there any prime suspect as of this moment? There is no prime suspect at this time.
55 years later, the mystery remains, but there is evidence that could lead deputies to the killer.
We do have bullet casings, and we do have some recovered slugs.
And those were found out here in this field, right?
Yes.
News 10 NBC obtained pictures of that key evidence never seen before. Smoyer and King were shot with a .45 caliber handgun. Investigators worked relentlessly, gathering anything they could find at the crime scene.
There's no doubt about it. Human blood is present in this sample.
Neighbors at the time reported hearing shots around 4:45 in the morning, hours after the victims had left the drive-in.
We have about a 2.5 hour gap in time where we don't know where they went, we don't know who they were with, we don't know what happened.
A mystery.
A mystery.
Over the decades, the sheriff's office has investigated hundreds of leads, but the case remains cold.
Unfortunately, I think we may be running out of time if the suspect was in their teens at the time. It's a race against the clock.
Anyone with information on this double murder in Pittsford from July 13th, 1963 is asked to call Crime Stoppers. That number is 585-423-9300. Coming up next week on Inside the Evidence, hear from Jack King's brother and his thoughts on who the killer could be. Nikki Rudd, News 10 NBC.
News 10 NBC is taking you inside the evidence. We're going where you can't. Inside police investigations of unsolved murders.
Last week we showed you never before seen evidence from Monroe County's oldest cold case, a double murder in Pittsford. New tonight, the brother of one of the victims is speaking out. Nikki Rudd joins us with the story you'll only see on News 10 NBC.
Cherie Smoyer and Jack King were out on a date back in 1963, but they never came home. The teens were found shot to death in Pittsford. Jack King's brother has been waiting for justice for decades.
Everybody's asking, why, who and why.
Jim King was a student at the University of Rochester when his younger brother Jack was murdered. He came home one weekend and he got the news.
Something's happened. And I think Jack's been killed.
Jack was just 1 year younger than Jim.
We were buddies.
They shared a room when they lived here in this Geneseo home.
Does it bring back memories being here at the house?
Yeah, a little bit.
Jim says his brother met Cherie Smoyer at a party on Canisius Lake just down the road from their house.
They were on their date, they were on their way home, and probably somebody who knew Cherie was not happy with the fact that she was out with my brother. And that's what I think happened.
The bodies of Jack and Cherie were found near Rondequoit Creek in Pittsford off Jefferson Road. They were lying next to each other near the King family Chevrolet Bel Air. This is film footage of the car being examined by deputies back in 1963.
These two reddish stains are being extracted.
Mr. King was shot twice in the lower body and once in the head. And Miss Smoyer was shot twice in the torso and then hit in the head with some sort of blunt object.
And cars would come back here?
Yes, cars would come back here. This was a frequent hangout for teenagers. People would also come back here, fish.
Monroe County Sheriff's investigator Mike Shannon took News 10 NBC to the scene of the crime. He says both teens still had money in their pockets and neither of them had been sexually assaulted.
It makes you wonder if this was more personal than we'd like to think.
It looks like he was, had made a move to defend her and got shot for it. She's the one that got, the worst of the deal.
Right. So, wrong place, wrong time for your brother?
Yeah, mostly.
News 10 NBC obtained pictures of key evidence never seen before. A bullet and casings recovered at the scene.
The bullet casings indicated, as we suspected, that they were all from .45 automatic. There was a question as to whether it was automatic or a revolver, but this is definite now. They are from an automatic.
Smoyer and King were shot with a .45 caliber handgun. A witness reported seeing a man with them around 2:30 in the morning on Route 96. Here's then Monroe County Sheriff Albert Skinner.
We couldn't identify him, but we saw that there were three people there.
Who was that man, and is he the killer? Back in 1963, deputies recovered plenty of evidence from the King Chevy.
We picked up some partial, what we call latent prints, and a palm print on the car, and they're being analyzed now.
But whoever killed Jack and Cherie has never been caught.
It would be nice to know who did it and why. We're not interested in revenge or, prosecutions or anything like that. It's really just knowing.
Anyone with information on this double murder is asked to call Crime Stoppers. That number is 585-423-9300. To see part 1 of this story, go to WHEC.com and click on Inside the Evidence. Nikki Rudd, News 10 NBC.